After saying, "Now I've got to find Emma." "Emma, come in and introduce yourself." Alice summoned Emma inside. Upon seeing Emma enter, I recognized her as my 14-year-old younger sister at a glance. Overwhelmed with emotion, I choked up. My friend Emma and I both began to weep. As if to record this momentous occasion, Alice whipped out her phone and snapped a few shots before leaving us. "Emma, you have an appointment for blood testing at 2. They promised a rush job, and I charged it to the corporate card," Alice informed me upon her return. "Also, I've made arrangements for you to meet your sister, Sarah, at the cafe at 4 and reserved a private table. Emma needs to see how we handle things. Sarah will take care of her kids. She knows you have important family news." I stood there, uncertain and upset, watching Emma approach me. I was overwhelmed with inquiries. A tight embrace ensued as Alice firmly shut the door. Being a father could be a new experience for me. When we walked out of my office, Emma shook as if she felt the same way. In an effort to get everything figured out, we attempted to move at a leisurely pace. We skipped lunch to go out to eat after getting the clinic to email the report. Emma, I found out, had forgone school that day in favor of driving nonstop until she needed a break at a gas station. I wanted to scream at her for being so reckless, but I restrained myself for fear of coming out as an overprotective parent. My own actions when I was her age were likewise triggered by that. I saw Sarah's automobile as soon as we got to the cafe. "I know we're here to meet your sister, but why did Alice set this up without talking to you first?" inquired Emma. "You're about to see what Alice and I saw when we first met you," said I. "It will explain why we believe you and Jane are my daughters and why I was shocked when the test came back positive." "Can I call you Dad?" she inquired. I grinned and chuckled. The cafe was an upgrade from a well-regarded restaurant, and the patron expressed their desire for it, saying, "I'd love that." We were promptly shown to our private booth by the owner and hostess. Extra Kleenex and a bottle of champagne were my order. As Sarah was facing away from us, I motioned for Emma to hold on as I went over. "Hi, sis, thanks for meeting me," I said. Sarah raised an eyebrow and said, "You seem happy. What's going on?" I told Sarah to get up because I wanted her to meet someone, and Emma came over. Sarah spun around and gazed as if she'd seen a younger self in the woman standing before her. "This is Laura's daughter, Emma." Their looks were quite similar: long chestnut hair, high cheekbones, little ears, pale blue eyes, and friendly grins. "Oh my God," Sarah cried out in shock. "Mark, you should have warned me. This is unbelievable. How long have you known about her?" "About 6 hours," Emma said with passion. "I caught him off guard at his office. Alice and Dad picked up on it right away. After seeing you, I get it." The server came back with tissues and understood our need for solitude. As Sarah sobbed, the hostess informed her that 3 other guests would be joining us, and we were escorted to a more spacious table. Sarah alerted our parents and gave her husband an emergency call, pleading with him to come over right away since there was a family emergency. Sarah refused to reveal anything over the phone when her frightened mother inquired what was going on. There was a great deal of emotion. Afterwards, Alice sent a message informing me that the news had been issued by the publisher and will be broadcasted on the 5th. As we were taking our first sip of champagne to unwind, my parents and Sarah's husband strolled in. My dad's voice was so loud that it made me chuckle as he exclaimed, "There better be a good reason for this." Sarah and I sprang to our feet to welcome them. "Mom, Dad, Mike, I'd like you to meet Laura's daughter, Emma Thompson," Sarah made the proud announcement. My mama's face lighted up with joy when she realized the likeness right away. A granddaughter had always been her dream. My dad was stunned and froze for a second. I can see the resemblance, but it's still a shock. Unable to talk due to her emotions, my mom sat next to Emma and held her hand firmly while he found his words. 2 more bottles of champagne were ordered by my proud father. I sprang to my feet as soon as our drinks were replenished. I spoke the words, "I need to explain," as Emma began to record using my phone. I filled them in on how we had crossed paths and what had transpired that day. Then my dad got to his feet. "Emma, we don't need a DNA test to recognize what's obvious. Welcome to our family. You have 2 more aunts who are excited to meet you. Promise us you'll always consider this family your home." Emma picked up the phone and stated, "I came here looking for the truth, unsure of what I would find. Today has changed everything for Dad and me. We had no idea until now. Meeting Aunt Sarah showed me what unconditional love really is. My older sister Jane will be overjoyed. I noticed that everyone at the table was clearly shifting. My normally emotionless dad even broke down in tears. My mom held out 2 fingers and screamed even more. I stopped the tape just before everyone was about to cry joyful tears. Emma sent a video to Jane and added her and her sister S numbers to my phone. I then received a text from Emma showing me the video. The message from Emma said something like, "If what we believe is true, the DNA test will confirm it. Watch the 500 news. Love, your sister." My mother, who was still in denial, wanted more evidence. Emma displayed the images of Jane and herself. They were shown on the screen for everyone to see since my mom was so adamant about having copies for her laptop. It became clear to me that nobody knew where Emma was when she placed her phone back in her handbag and turned it off. My phone went off. Jane was the one making the call. I got to my feet and went to a more peaceful spot to respond. When my father saw that I was crying, he sent me a puzzled look. I answered the phone after Emma said, "It's my sister." My dad gave me an understanding nod. "Hello, this is Jane. I had to call after seeing the video. Since she is dropping by the police station to get an update on Emma, she wanted to be home until at least 6 o'clock. Here I am, acting as if I am clueless. The cops dropped off their card earlier. If you ask me, what should I do? I'll tell him to watch the 5 news and see if anything comes out about me. I told him to show him the video and tell him you'll chat when your parents aren't there. I gave him my phone and told him to text before phoning. I told him he'll watch the news and understand. Once we have the DNA proof, Emma and I might bring the whole family." "What do you mean?" she inquired. I told her, "The family will spread the word. I don't know how many will come, but those who can will." She then questioned, "Why?" After I explained Emma's efforts, "We shall see. Because in the Johnson family, blood is thicker than water. If I'm not a match, someone else might be." "Just like that?" Jane said with doubt. "Absolutely." "You'll witness it," I said while laughing. "We may be strangers now, but that won't last." We continued our conversation for a while before saying our goodbyes, and she responded with relieved tears in her eyes. I informed the family of Emma's purpose for being here after placing the dinner order. The moment news got out and people began to collect possible matches, mobile phones began to ring nonstop. My mom was in charge of making sure everything was in its place. My dad inquired, "Emma, how did you get here?" I drove my old 1988 Voyager van. "It is barely holding together," she said with delight. "It's in Dad's parking lot. Take that van to my dealership in the morning. You're not driving back in that." "It is a miracle she made it here," my father remarked with conviction. "At her age, you had just as much sense as she does. She is determined." "What do you plan to give her?" I put forth. He winked and smiled and said, "She can choose a new one. If I could choose, it would be a 4x4. "I love the outdoors," she said. In response, my dad grinned broadly and said, "That's perfect. We all love the outdoors." If the weather allowed, we were always fishing, camping, or hunting. He then started reminiscing about the year I learned to water ski and went barefoot. My parents thought it would be awkward for us to be alone that night, so Emma stayed with them while my dad told tales like he was conducting court. Following supper, Dad dropped them off to her vehicle and then returned home with it. She couldn't contain her joy and was already making plans to lavish her new grandchild with gifts. In the end, Dad had to wait till midnight for their return. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, I received a call from the police investigator. A background investigation on me took him 2 hours to do. After I made the material public, reporters couldn't stop asking me questions. The matter and associated matters were covered in our conversation. A lot of his questions had been addressed by seeing the 3 generations in the movie. I informed him that Emma was staying with my parents and that we were speeding up the DNA testing to establish our kinship. After we had the go-ahead, we'd come back and check whether Jane and I were a good fit. In an effort to buy us some time, I informed him that I would keep him informed of our progress. Afterwards, Jane informed me that he relayed our talk to her. With fresh eyes, I was facing my history once again. The wealth and influence of my ex-wife's family wouldn't faze me this time. I would use the truth, the courts, and the media to my benefit. I had the necessary means, evidence, and an increasing resolve. Truthful justice was all I wanted, not vengeance. 4 individuals in the federal government were no match for me. The next morning, I was already at my office, making sure that any changes to my schedule wouldn't have much of an impact on me, and assigning chores to Alice to do while I was gone. Like an overprotective mother, Alice wanted to know everything about my day, so she continued monitoring the email accounts and interrogating me. I must admit that I was captivated by Alice Parker's beauty. I bet she was the stuff of adolescent fantasies when she was younger. Her wide lips and piercing emerald green eyes were still alluring, and her naturally groomed brown hair emphasized her gentle features. I was grateful she never caught sight of me admiring her while I was a single guy. Upon receiving the DNA test results, Alice yelled out, "It's confirmed. You are her father." Subsequently, she contacted the lab to forward the information to Jane's expert and began a search for the most formidable litigation attorney in Boston. She set up a Skype meeting with the top candidate after carefully reviewing many. Feeling certain that it was a sure thing, the lawyer consented to work on a percentage basis. We would use the DNA evidence to sue my ex-wife, her husband, and her parents for allegedly removing me from my biological family. Their intentional conduct would be shown when the restricted court order against me is reversed. Their efforts at control and intimidation would be on full display in the fictitious contract they supposedly entered into with me. Even before the government was involved, the lawyer saw the possibility of a substantial case. To my new lawyer, I begged Alice to deliver a dusty gray box from the safe. There was damning proof that Laura's dad had plotted to destroy my marriage and my career in it. It had taken years of navigating bureaucratic red tape to get this evidence. A police officer eventually released a video that reframed the tale as a daughter who had ran away from home, locating her biological father in order to save her sister, setting off a media frenzy. "Mom," it's confirmed. I texted her. "I have 2 daughters. Thank God. Be ready to leave by 6:00 a.m. from the car lot. I'll inform everyone." "Have you contacted your daughters?" he said. We were en route to Eagle, Massachusetts, in a fully stocked 3-year-old Ford Explorer. 30 more cars trailed after Emma and myself, with my parents in an RV serving as the convoy's leader. My phone sounded the alarm just as we were about to leave. Emma took the call and placed it on speaker. "CNN is tracking you," Jane said us after we exchanged hello. "There's an RV with a sign that says the Johnsons are coming. 1 out of 150 should be a match. We have the DNA test confirming he is our father." "I am driving a new 3-year-old Ford Explorer," said Emma. "Dad said if it was verified, a lot of family would come. But I never anticipated this," she said. "It's given me hope I never imagined. I can remember feeling this good." Dad's family spread the word and people emerged from everywhere. I met so many relatives this morning it will take multiple introductions to remember their names. I met first, second, and even third cousins. "I am so proud I want to change my last name to Johnson," said Emma. "I never knew families like this existed. I was so overwhelmed I nearly drove off the road. I knew then that my next book had to be about this life-changing event. When Jane announced she had to go, my girls were still rehashing what Emma had gone through. Her mom had only entered. Concerned, Emma questioned, "Dad, are you okay?" from her heart. "I saw you get very emotional. How do you think I feel?" I discovered I have 2 daughters who were raised by my ex-wife and a former friend without my knowledge. One is vibrant and full of life. The other is on the verge of dying. One is so strong and independent, she moves mountains without a second thought, just like I would, and she wants to take my name, I said, my voice filled with emotion and pride. "Emma," I added, "I was so focused on saving my sister's life that I didn't consider the impact on you. I wasn't a good match because I inherited a faulty gene from our mother. The emotional turmoil I've caused will linger for days. Can you forgive me?" "For what? For coming into my life and turning everything upside down? No, that is what life is about. You've given everyone another person to love. You've given me a chance to be a real dad," I said, my eyes welling up with tears. "Your grandparents adore you. My mother is so proud to see her face in you. It means everything. You and your sister have become her favorites by birthright. She's been spoiling us. We went shopping, and if she bought me something, she got one for Jane too," she said, laughing and claiming she still had years of spoiling to make up for. "That's Mom. You'll find it impossible to distance her from you." "I know, I've tried," I informed her. "Sarah and my girls will boast about this for weeks. By the end, this will become a family legend shared for years." We discovered that Laura began experiencing acute panic attacks the moment she viewed the live news stream about our arrival. The defenses she had erected against her deceit were beginning to fall. As soon as she put down her phone, Jane, energized and confident, approached her. "Mom, Jane wanted to know why you withheld the truth about our biological father. She continued to push harder when she received no response. You kept secrets from us and made decisions about our lives. How did you get the authority to act like God? Not even Dad knew. Would you have allowed me to die if Emma hadn't discovered him and sought the truth? Laura was caught off guard, never expecting the truth to be revealed. Her dad had an innate dislike for Mark and would do everything to keep him at arm's length. Luckily, it was the same time when Jane's doctor stepped in. We received DNA from a man we didn't know, proving he is Jane's biological father. He is coming to be tested, and there is a good chance he is a bone marrow match. He should be here tomorrow afternoon, and for his protection, he'll be under guard, the physician said, before departing. Mom, my bio-dad is coming with 150 others in case he is not a match. He wants to give me a fighting chance, she told me. Questions like why prompted Laura to inquire more. To him and his family, blood is thicker than water. Though I'm a stranger to them, I am family, and family comes first, said she. Laura saw the footage of my family's meeting with Emma and said, You had to know we look like our real dad's mother. Watch this video. It proves everything. The fact that 3 generations wore the same face was obvious. The reality had become too much for her to ignore. Her spouse and her acts were backfiring, and her daughters had evidence. Suddenly, a guy knocked on Jane's door and demanded to speak with Laura. After Laura confirmed her identity, he presented her with a large legal envelope and said, You have been served. Laura collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. In her wrath, Jane had no compassion. Jane questioned her mother. Mom, why did Grandpa put a contract on my bio-dad's life, with the knowledge that she would not get a meaningful response? Brian Harper had just departed from a business meeting. Legal documents were given to him as he strolled down the corridor. He read them while sitting in the lobby. The first piece of paper was a court case that sought to revoke Mark's paternity rights by suing him and his wife. The second one was a conspiracy accusation against Mark and his in-laws, who he said were out to destroy his marriage and professional life. When Mark demanded full custody of his girls, it was obvious he was out for vengeance. Unless Emma had located him, he would have been completely unaware of their existence, he said. He made the morally dubious accusation that Brian and Laura would have allowed Jane to die so they could retain their secrets. Given the publicity in the media, it would be difficult to prove differently in court. It brought up a flood of memories for Brian of their time as football teammates and dorm mates at university. Mark succeeded where the other failed by winning Laura over. Moreover, Brian had served as best man during their nuptials, but Mark's upbringing meant that Laura's father never approved of him. After he persuaded Brian consented to pursue Laura. Mark was occupied with DEA tasks thanks to her father's influence. Thus, Laura and Brian were left to their alone together. Mark spent 3 months undercover, and during that time, Laura and Brian got romantically involved. Upon Mark's return, her father presented him with the recorded proof of their affair, which her father had secretly taped. Laura attributed her irregular menstrual cycles to stress, not realizing she was pregnant. Mark promptly filed for a divorce, much to her father's delight. It was obvious that Mark was Jane's father when she was born. Unfairly, Mark had already been fired because Laura's father had wrongly accused him. Mark left the region in a shroud of shame for 6 years as he worked to clear his record. The couple, Brian and Laura, were married and had a son and a daughter. Brian and Laura's father plotted to break up the marriage, and the uncut videos would show it all. For a moment, Brian wondered how Laura would handle the revelation of this information. After a 16-hour trip, Emma and I reached our last destination for the night at about 10 o'clock in the evening, completely drained. We had a fast light dinner delivered to our rooms and went to sleep, only to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, all the way to the alarm. We left rather early, Emma and I. An NSA agent and a police officer were to meet behind closed doors. At 8 in the morning, the remainder of our party departed. During the 8-hour journey, I met William Lee, an NSA agent, and Detective Matthew Parker at the Eagle Police Department, where Emma dropped me off. Spending more than 2 hours talking about the questioning of Laura's father, I left a USB disk with all of my proof and my lawyer's contact information. Prior to my trip, I was subjected to government protection and accompanied by security personnel. I was tested for bone marrow donor eligibility by having blood drawn at the hospital. I overheard Emma and Jane talking as I walked up to Jane S.'s private room. I autographed a book for a nurse since the hospital staff knew I was the author. As Emma stepped into Jane S.'s room, she cried out in shock, "Dad!" Jane was weak and her skin was loose, a sign that she was reaching the end of her life. Regardless, her optimism shone through her wide grin and sparkling eyes. "Jane, they are rushing the test results. They should be in within 40 minutes. The rest of the family is checking into their hotels. My parents are currently having their bone marrow drawn and will meet you soon. If there is more than one match, the doctor plans for a simultaneous double transplant in both arms," I said, attempting to keep my cool. I sat on the side of Jane S.'s bed and comforted her till she calmed down after she broke down in sobs. With floods of relief and excitement streaming down our faces, Emma took a moving portrait of us. Her pride was palpable, and she had every reason to be. As I seen my girls reunited for the first time, I couldn't help but marvel at the tremendous effort she had made. "Grandma and Grandpa, I'd like you to meet my sister," Emma said with enthusiasm. We lingered in discussion for almost an hour before Jane S.'s cheerful doctor walked in. "Jane and my mother are a great fit," I said. Dr. Lee wanted to know whether we were ready to check in for surgery at 8 in the morning. Day after that, we said to each other, "Thank God." We prayed for a miracle all the way up. My dad and I both agreed. Asking, "Don, do you need my parents' permission?" Jane voiced her concern. "Normally, yes. However, we received a court order this morning, thanks to Mr. Johnson, allowing us to proceed if he or a relative is a match. The judge believed that your mother and her husband weren't prioritizing your needs. Mr. Johnson will cover all non-insurance costs," said Dr. Lee. A security officer then informed us that we were going to be shown on national TV, and Emma grinned and said, "I am not surprised, sis. With what Mom and Brian did, Dad had no choice but to use the courts to prevent delays." Jane turned the channel to CNN, which exposed me as the writer of a best-selling book series with a projected $50 million market value. The doctor, Emma, and Jane were all shocked, and my parents just stared at me in disbelief. None of them knew. To them, it seemed like I was just a financial counselor for a corporation. Jane cried out, "My God, Dad," she said. "Have you read all your books?" "They are fantastic," I said with laughter. After my former life was shattered, I had to reinvent myself. Writing became my therapy. The success of my first book was a turning point, and it only grew from there. I expose raw truths about world events, societal views, and morals in my books, whether people like it or not, I wrote. I accompanied my mom to the hospital for the first time in 20 years. The hospital's security wouldn't let my new daughter and me share a room, no matter how much she begged. Throughout the night, Emma dashed between 3 separate rooms. My dad contacted family members to inform them. Cold reception awaited Laura and Brian upon their arrival after work. Due to a court order, Jane is scheduled to have a double bone marrow transplant the next morning, and she notified them that she was being prepared for operation. Laura inquired, "How?" "Mom, my bio dad and his mother are perfect matches. Both are donating so I can recover fully," Jane said with calmness. "Mom, do you know who Charles Wilson is? He's your favorite author." "Well, Charles Wilson is a pen name for Mark Evan Johnson, my bio dad." Jane revealed the shocking information. Brian and Laura both became quite pale. However, Mark's enormous wealth demonstrated that he wasn't chasing financial gain, dashing their hopes of the legal case vanishing effortlessly. Justice he yearned for. Up until his dismissal, Mark was an effective agent because of his unwavering commitment to law and order. "You might want to check with Grandma to see if he's home. Can you explain why this is happening?" Jane said with a broad grin. Emma was in the hospital, perhaps in the room with Dad or Grandma Johnson. While Emma and I were in my hospital room, we were talking about how Emma would deal with her mother if Laura and Brian wanted to visit her. Then Laura discovered her. The door swung open and a security guard peered inside. Emma asked, "Mr. Johnson, do you know these two?" Before continuing, Miss Fiance, "Didn't you see my ring?" Before opening the door for Brian and Laura, "Dad, I wouldn't trust these two for a moment. They're just trying to cover their backs. You don't know the half of it." "Emma," Alice began, "your dad's lawyer has video evidence showing your stepfather receiving a check from your grandfather as payment to break up your parents' marriage. If successful, he would manage your grandparents' finances for a 4 annual fee." "How do you know this is true?" asked Laura. "And who are you?" Mom, she's Dad's fiance and a skilled researcher. Her name is Alice Parker, and I trust her more than you, she said with conviction. Laura's cheeks became pale. She felt helpless when her girls began to distance themselves. I supported Alice because she spoke the truth. I told my attorney to turn over all of the audio and he would never earn Laura's confidence again. Mark, I dreaded this day. I never thought you'd return. If we had met by chance, I could have ignored it, he said. He departed, leaving us in utter quiet, saying, I never saw this coming. It is best I leave and say nothing more. As I gazed at Alice with sincere adoration, I saw her flush for the very first time. Here I was, at last, letting my guard down. She seemed to be playing me, or maybe she was just opening up about how she really felt. Did my feelings for her extend beyond those of a friend? Regardless, I was roused from my slumber by my girls. Instead of constructing my own thrill, I had been content to bask in the glow of other people's Alice. Let's have a conversation while I am healing, I whispered. These past few days have opened my eyes. I got comfortable on the sidelines instead of being in the game. Mark, when I got divorced, you stepped in. My kids were still young, and you've been more of a dad to them than their biological father. From baseball games to father-daughter dances, you were always there. I know why you pay me more than the going rate. You want to ensure the kids in your heart are well cared for, remarked Alice. On their birthdays, you always went all out, making them the envy of their friends. During summer breaks, you took us on special trips, creating lifelong memories. You answer their questions like a father should. They love you, and you love them. Your only problem is your fear of commitment. I was unable to communicate with them. That Alice was correct struck me like a ton of bricks. Theirs did as well. I approached Alice and took a seat next to her. I gathered my thoughts while holding her hand and staring into her eyes. Laura betrayed me. Her father intimidated me, and my best friend deceived me. I lived with constant threats. I put myself in protection mode until a few days ago. Now that I've realized it, can we go on our first real date, or is it too late for you and me? I put forth. After Alice kissed me, she said, I am texting our kids to tell them we're now a couple and working things out. I smiled and said, pretty confident. She then proceeded to mock me for taking too long. After thanking Emma, I sent her a text to see if she was all right. Her response was, Mom didn't know. She's taking it hard and wanted to be back tonight. Let Jane know. After I introduced Alice as my girlfriend, we walked up to Jane's room. We briefed her on what transpired earlier and showed her the text message from Emma. When Sarah, my sister, stepped in, we were almost done. I simply had to meet her, Sarah said. Alice, what are you doing here? I want to say something, but Sarah figured it out, said I. Sarah smiled and said, he finally got it, didn't he? While others frowned. Took him long enough. Jane, this is your Aunt Sarah, and the man coming in is your Uncle Mike. As I excused myself and made my way to the nurse's station, I texted Emma to inquire about Jane's pizza choices. You'll soon learn we speak our minds, like it or not. Jane liked most foods, she said, but anchovies are her least favorite. I requested 3 3-liter colas and 3 extra-large pizzas for expedited delivery. Also, I gave Dad a call and asked him to pick up Mom in 20 minutes so we can have a pizza party. We went overboard on the no food for 6 hours guideline. The top nurse came in to reassure us, but she slipped out with a pizza slice in her hand. The spirits of the whole floor were lifted by your actions, she told me later when she stopped me. They brought my mom and me to get ready for the procedure around 5 in the morning, and I told them, I can't thank you enough. As we waited to be wheeled in, we held each other up. I did not go to sleep till the medicine started working. It was finished when I awoke. The time for waiting and praying has arrived. The bone marrow transplant was a success, according to Dr. Lee, but the results wanted to be known for a few hours. When word got out, most of the relatives began making plans to return home. Alice is the worst patient ever, I said. But I am not sick, I countered. You're like a bull in a china shop, impatient, unruly, and miserable. Keep it up, and you'll get a bad reputation, she said to me. My mom is doing okay, according to Alice. My phone was returned to me after she'd confirmed my stability. My first messages were from Alice's children, who were both excited and worried about the arrival of their new girls and the timing of their mother's engagement ring. Alice, your kids are smart, I told her, holding out the phone. I told them I was coming to watch over you after the operation. They had a lot of questions and the whole story came out. They weren't surprised. They said, Mom, Hiwesa always treated us like his own. Most of our friends envy us for having him as a dad. We've always seen him as our real father, Alice remarked, her eyes wet with emotions as she read the message. Well, it looks like our engagement won to be very long, I said with a smile. Have you heard from the girls? Emma and her mother are with Jane. She's doing well under the circumstances. Even though she's still on medication, she's full of questions. I heard from Alice. Emma told her about the pizza party. Jane can't believe how much she resembles her aunt and grandmother. She's eager to have a girls' day out with them when she's better. Get me my pants. I need to see her myself and then check on Mom, I said. The nurses attempted to dissuade me by arguing that it was premature after surgery, but I was unmoved. We set out together, holding hands. Interestingly, I was able to control my discomfort. The change in Jane was obvious to Alice and me right away. Her skin seemed better, and I was almost moved to tears by the radiance in her eyes. Emma wanted to know, who are David and Laura Parker, she inquired. Why, Alice said. They're my kids, ages 15 and 13. I got a Facebook friend request from them this morning. So did Jane, added Emma. Both of you need to read what they sent me, I replied, giving Emma my phone. She grinned as she read it and then gave it to Jane. I need this back to add their phone numbers to my contacts, I informed them. After that, Laura wanted to have a private conversation with me, so we headed to the waiting room. Mark, I had a long talk with my mother last night. She admitted that she remembered Dad's hatred towards you, but never thought it would go this far. My daughters want to finish the school year here and then move in with you. They want their last name changed to yours. They feel that what Brian and I did is unforgivable, the woman said. I can't argue with them. They made it clear they'd take me to court if I refused. They no longer trust me, and I can blame them. Will you take them? You know my family wouldn't let me say no, no matter how I felt. I will gladly take them, and so will Alice. We'll just need a bigger place. I'll drop the suit against you if you agree to joint custody, said I. While agreeing to share custody, Laura was told, the lawsuit will still proceed against the rest of your family. I offered to cover the cost of changing their name, but she turned me down. We returned to Jane S. room side by side. We were noticed by the females. Alice, it looks like we are going to need at least a 5-bedroom house, I informed her. The girls let out a joyful shriek in response to Alice's grin. Laura pointed out, girls, your father and I agree you get your wishes. If Alice agrees, I'll call the lawyer tomorrow to start the legal process for your name change. Mark, she inquired, are you ready for this? A house full of teenagers? No one's ever truly ready, but we adapt. I'm just getting used to the idea of 2 carrying my name, I informed her. Make that 4. David and Laura want you to adopt them. They are already signing their names as Johnson, added Alice. Contact Michael Smith's law office to initiate the necessary paperwork, and then inform the children of our intentions via text message. I propose that we research the top school districts in the region to choose where to search for a new house. With a quick search of her contacts, Emma dialed a number and put it on speaker. The question was asked, Hello? By David. Who is this? This is Emma, your soon-to-be older sister. Is Laura with you? Said Emma. Prove it. I can just take your word for it, David stated with a hint of skepticism. Seriously, is this a scam? David, this is Alice. You're talking to Mark's daughter, Emma. We're all going to be Johnsons. Jane and I are changing our last names, and your dad and I have started the process for him to adopt you and change your name to Johnson too, said Emma. Very good. Let Dad know that it's about time. How is Jane? Was Laura's response. As Megan and I exchanged glances, we were witnesses to the first discussion of our mixed family. We've been waiting to hear. With a supportive squeeze, she held my hand. There was an improvement, Jane remarked. So far, so good. I'll text you both so you can add my number. Emma, Jane, our dad is the only father we've known. Our bio dad was gone before we even knew him. Your dad has been better than any of our friends' parents. Mom has been in love with him for a long time. When we all come together, we need to accept that we are siblings. Nothing more, nothing less, David said with determination. With a nod, my girls agreed. Laura and I want to let anything disrupt our family unity. Alice continued, her voice trailing off into tears. They've truly embraced your values and principles. You should be proud of them. I said I am, overwhelmed with a surge of pride. For the time being, we bid our goodbyes and headed to visit my mom. They were taken aback as we went in, with Dad accompanying her. Dad grinned knowingly when he spotted Alice's face. "Mom," I said, "you are already up and about. Have you seen Jane? How is she?" "She is improving," said my mom. "Her complexion looks better and she is in good spirits, but it is still early days. We need to have a serious conversation, if you both have the time," I informed her. "According to my dad, let us hear it since we aren't leaving. Jane and Emma will be living with me after the school year, and they'll be changing their last name to ours," I pointed them. My parents' reactions were identical. That's wonderful news. Laura had already consented to the change in name and shared custody, although the girls had first proposed it. "And that's not all," Alice ventured to add. With tears welling up in Mom's eyes and a wide grin spreading over Dad's face, Margaret said, "Are you prepared to assist in the planning of our wedding?" Her son had chosen to turn me into an honest lady. Their words were unnecessary. We could feel their approval. "I'll be adopting David and Laura, and they'll take my last name too. Alice and I will start house hunting as soon as we get back," I informed her. With a smirk on his face, my dad replied, "What finally made you come to your senses? We all knew how you both felt about each other. I've been trying to get your mother's approval to knock some sense into you. Evan Johnson, behave yourself. You're not at the yard selling a car," Mom instructed him in a joking manner. "Alice, have you thought about your wedding plans? We haven't discussed it much, but since we are blending 3 families, it should be a family affair. Sarah can be my maid of honor, Marcus best man, his brothers-in-law as ushers, Jane and Emma as bridesmaids, Laura as the flower girl, and David as the ring bearer." "Dad, will you walk me down the aisle with my father?" Alice inquired with a smile. "That depends on the host's budget and whether or not they have Jack Daniels on hand," Dad joked. Wondering what Mark thought, Alice spoke forward. "It's perfect. It will bring us all together. If that's what you want, let us do it," said I. I voiced my question. Should we invite Laura? My parents both strongly objected. "Mom, Dad, in the coming weeks the media will expose a lot. I'm suing the federal government, Laura's parents, and her husband. I believe Laura was as much a victim as I was. I paid the price years ago, and now Laura is paying in ways we can't even imagine." I told her that she feels like she's lost her children for good. My parents and Alice were in wonder as I told them. Inviting her might help the girls and her rebuild their relationship and move on from the past. My dad questioned, "Where did that wisdom come from?" With a real air of fascination. I said, "The past few days have been really eye-opening," while still clutching Alice's hand. Emma's arrival made me realize what's truly important in life. We went back to my room, and I succumbed to sleep fast, totally drained from the operation. While I was on the phone with the news, Alice watched with me. After confessing to lying to the NSA, Christopher Thompson and Brian Harper were both taken into custody. The individual who had signed a contract threatening my life had flipped on the state's evidence. Details of my dismissal from the DEA were leaked by my attorney, which triggered an internal investigation. Alice filled me in as soon as I woke up. My mom and I were told by Dr. Lee that we would be discharged the next day. "You all need follow-ups and to get your stitches removed," added the doctor. "Jane is doing better than expected. The big question is how she'll respond as she's weaned off her meds." We visited with my parents, who opted to remain in the city until Jane began her journey to recovery. Dad had arranged for a private jet, so they would return with us. Over the next few days, the bus driver was told to return. My marriage and career were destroyed by the political maneuvering, betrayal, and insincerity exposed by the media. They devoted a whole day to analyzing the ways in which Laura's father had lied to her. Everyone was looking at Laura. Our last destination before returning home was Jane, so Alice and I were on our way to see her. She was on the road to a complete recovery, Dr. Lee had said with pride. The security clearance that my publisher and I had been waiting for was unexpectedly granted, so someone in a higher position must have despised the unfavorable press about the federal government's previous interactions with me. My new book would be available in hardcover for purchase in less than 2 weeks. Overnight, I had 2 first editions sent to me. We concealed them in a shopping bag after Alice sealed them after we signed them. Before we paid Jane a visit, we confirmed that Emma would be there. "The first weekend in May has been chosen as the wedding date by your dad and me," Alice revealed with a grin. "Aunt Sarah will be my maid of honor. I was wondering if you two would be my bridesmaids." Jane's pupils widened. "Absolutely, Alice." When I first walked into Dad's office, I was terrified. But you recognized me immediately and said, "You are Laura's daughter. How are we going to handle this?" It stunned me how you accepted me from day one. "I'd be honored to be in your wedding, and I'd love to call you Mom." Jane was so thrilled that she sprang out of bed as the three of them embraced. After everything calmed down, I took out the presents and gave each of them an autographed first edition of my book. On the front it read, "To one of the two prettiest ladies who call me Dad. With love, Charles Wilson Mark Evan Johnson." Jane was ecstatic as she opened the package. With more than 700 pages, it was my largest book to date. Even though it wasn't out yet, her pride shone through her proud expression. She tore the cover open, read my letter, and immediately started crying. She ran into my arms, sobbing, and said, "Dad, you've done so much already. I didn't need this." Emma was watching with tears in her eyes as she embraced me firmly. "Before you came into my life, the doctor said I only had a few weeks left." Emma knew it too. "I don't know why she went into the attic, but I'm so glad she did because it brought us you. Dad, you should know Dr. Lee believes if Jane had only received one transplant, it wouldn't have worked." The double transplant shocked her body into responding. "In the last 10 days, she's gained 15 pounds, said Emma. "I didn't know if you would come, but you didn't hesitate. You brought a whole tribe. Thanks to the family, I am getting my best friend back." I inquired, "How's your mom doing?" in an effort to lift spirits. "She has filed for divorce and is going to therapy to deal with a lifetime of lies. She now understands what you went through and is ashamed," said Jane. "She says only someone who has experienced it can understand that it is a living hell. Her work and friends are her support. Mom is strong and will get through it. The key will be getting her to trust again. Right now, she doesn't know who or what to believe," said Emma. "Even with family support, regaining trust can take years. It requires an unexpected act of faith." "For me, it was Emma walking through my office door," I pointed out. Alice chimed in, "Thank God you did," and the laughter continued. As soon as we walked off the airport, Alice's parents and daughters met us. Mark had me thinking I'd die an old maid waiting for him. "Now, girls, stand by your father so I can capture a few photos. The best one will be an 8x10 for his desk." The infectious enthusiasm of the children almost knocked me down. Hearing children call me Dad was a pleasure for my dad. Just like me, David would have one younger sister and two older ones. As she embraced my mom, Laura said these words, "I am so happy you are becoming my grandmother." Thinking about how rapidly my life was changing due to these unanticipated benefits, I mused. After the wedding, Alice and I decided to put off our original plans. So that she could take care of finding a new home for us, I let Alice know what we needed. Because of this, I was able to create my first novel. Secret deals and corruption were uncovered in my earlier writings. The girls and I maintained regular contact, and Alice stumbled into a beautiful 25-acre plot of land that had an abandoned barn in need of restoration. As Jane's condition improved, she went back to school part-time. Our ideal home has an outdoor kitchen, huge patio, pool, and 5-bay garage. We had a business create the plans using steel and masonry. I was able to devote more time to writing once Alice cut down on her office hours. I had my first book published under my actual name after working with an editor to finish more than 400 pages. In her divorce from Brian, Laura was able to get alimony and fund his school expenses with the help of my lawyer. The other side had given up fighting while my cases were in mediation. Following their final day of school, David, Laura, Alice, and I were all quite excited to see the girls. As soon as David saw their vehicle approaching our brand new driveway, we all hurried outside to say hello. I was astounded by Jane's remarkable recovery when they disembarked from the Explorer. Emma could hardly tell her from her. As David, in his role as the watchful older sibling, carried their bags, Alice reassured them, "We'll figure it out." Alice then took great pride in showcasing the property,